Across Africa, a quiet revolution is underway, one that doesn't involve protests, coups, or elections, but lines of computer code and financial networks. This is the story of how Africa is building its own payment system, designed to let countries trade freely with one another, without first converting their currencies into U.S. dollars. For decades, African nations have depended on the dollar for almost every cross-border transaction, whether it's a Kenyan importer buying copper from Zambia or a Nigerian company paying for Egyptian machinery. That meant higher costs, slower transfers, and heavy reliance on banks in New York or London. But today, a new system aims to rewrite that story. The Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, better known as COMESA, has 21 member states and more than 600 million people. It's one of the largest regional blocs on the continent, stretching from Libya and Egypt in the north to Eswatini and Zimbabwe in the south. In 2012, COMESA began developing what it called the Regional Payment and Settlement System, or REPSS. The goal was simple: create a secure digital platform that allows central banks in member countries to clear and settle payments in their own currencies instantly. For years, that vision sat quietly in the background, overshadowed by other continental initiatives. But as the African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, started taking shape, the need for a fast, reliable, dollar-free payment backbone became urgent. That's when Africa's central banks, the African Export-Import Bank, AfCFTA, and COMESA began linking REPSS with a broader idea, the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, or PAPSS. Here's how it functions. When a company in Kenya wants to buy goods from Zambia, the Kenyan importer pays in shillings through its local bank. That payment is sent via Kenya's central bank into REPSS. At the other end, Zambia's exporter receives kwacha instantly. No need to convert Kenyan shillings to dollars. Transfer those dollars through New York, and then reconvert them to kwacha. The result: fewer intermediaries, lower transaction costs, faster trade. AfCFTA provides the clearing and settlement guarantee, ensuring liquidity and trust across borders. In practice, this means African countries can settle trade in local currencies within hours instead of days, a big shift in efficiency for regional commerce. Africa loses billions every year in currency conversion and correspondent banking fees. According to AfCFTA, the continent spends around $5 billion annually just to process cross-border payments through the U.S. and European financial systems. For African small businesses, that's money that could go toward hiring workers or buying better equipment. By settling payments locally, systems like REPSS and PAPSS could save governments, banks, and companies huge sums, while strengthening each country's currency. It's also a step toward financial sovereignty. The dollar's dominance has long been both a convenience and a constraint. When U.S. interest rates rise or sanctions are imposed, African economies often feel the shockwaves immediately. Reducing dependence on the dollar gives African governments more room to breathe. The COMESA system isn't happening in isolation. It's part of a wider movement across the global south. In West Africa, the PAPSS system, officially launched in 2022, connects countries from Ghana to Nigeria to Sierra Leone. In the east, COMESA's REPSS is linking up with AfCFTA's network. Together, these projects are building the financial plumbing for intra-African trade under the AfCFTA, the world's largest free trade zone by number of countries, covering 1.4 billion people and a combined GDP of more than $3.4 trillion. If it works, it could boost African intra-trade from about 15% today to over 50% within the next decade, according to UNCTAD estimates. The new payment systems don't threaten the dollar overnight. The U.S. currency still handles roughly 80% of all global trade settlements. But the symbolism matters. For the first time, African nations are designing financial infrastructure that doesn't rely on Washington or Brussels. When countries can trade and settle directly, they build resilience and attract new partners who want to deal in local currencies or new digital platforms. This aligns with broader global trends. China and Russia have promoted yuan and ruble settlement systems. The BRICS bloc has discussed creating its own reserve currency mechanism. Africa is carving out its own version of that story, not by rejecting globalization, but by rewriting how it engages with it. Experts highlight three main advantages: reduced transaction costs. No more double currency conversions. Faster trade flows. Payments settle within the same day. Stronger financial integration, building confidence among African central banks. But challenges remain. Only a handful of countries are fully connected to REPSS and PAPSS. Some African currencies remain volatile, making direct settlement tricky. Banks and businesses need training and trust to shift away from old systems. Yet momentum is building. The African Union, AfCFTA, and COMESA have all pledged to expand these networks, linking them to new digital identification systems and customs platforms. Beyond the technical details lies a bigger story. Africa is asserting more control over its own money. In the 1960s, newly independent nations inherited economic systems designed for colonial trade, exporting raw materials and importing finished goods, often priced and paid for in foreign currencies. Now, 6 decades later, the continent's new generation of policymakers and technologists are designing financial tools suited for African realities, from mobile money in Kenya to blockchain experiments in Nigeria to pan-regional settlement systems in COMESA. This shift isn't anti-Western, it's pro-African. It's about using African innovation to solve African problems, and, in the process, helping the world build a more balanced financial order. Global institutions are paying attention. The IMF, World Bank, and international banking networks have all expressed cautious support, noting that systems like PAPSS and REPSS can make African economies more efficient, as long as they maintain transparency and sound regulation. Western analysts also see opportunity. A more integrated Africa could become a stronger trading partner, not just a source of raw materials. But geopolitically, the move marks a quiet shift of power. The less Africa depends on the dollar, the more it can chart its own monetary policies and negotiate global deals on its own terms. In the next 5 years, expect to see deeper integration between these payment systems, regional stock exchanges, and digital identity platforms. Imagine an African entrepreneur in Nairobi paying a supplier in Accra instantly through a single mobile app, with funds cleared through REPSS or PAPSS, not a bank in Europe. That's the vision driving this transformation. A self-sustaining continental market where African currencies, African institutions, and African creativity power growth from within. Across Africa, financial independence is no longer a dream, it's infrastructure. From COMESA's payment platform to AfCFTA's trade corridors, the continent is laying the foundations for a new era of collaboration. The dollar will remain a global currency for a long time, but Africa's choice to build alternatives marks a historic milestone. It says to the world, we can connect, trade, and grow on our own terms.